Hello, and welcome to Fool's Tome, a podcast about Magic the Gathering. I'm your host, Ty Thomason. This week is the week after Premodern Lobstercon. I'm joined by Stu Ziarnik, and we talk about his Orcish Librarian take on Sly. I hope you enjoy. All right, I'm here with LobsterCon top 8 competitor Stu Ziarnik. Stu, welcome to Fool's Tome.
Thanks, Ty. Thanks for pronouncing the name correctly. Totally organically. There was no prep on that. Yeah. Yeah, happy to be on here. I've liked listening to these so far. It's cool that you're
good
doing
to hear.
that.
I don't know how much people actually listen, but I'm glad that some people do, and the ones that do seem to like it. So that's really all it's for, you know. I don't write the blog for anybody but myself, and the podcast, I don't even know who I do that for, since I don't listen to it.
But yeah, well, just keep shouting into the void.
Yeah, exactly.
Way to live life.
So let's talk about LobsterCon. So is this your first time at LobsterCon? Is that?
It was, yeah. I've been aware of LobsterCon for years. My first interaction with this event was back in 2020. I did the send in a donation thing because it was virtual for COVID, and I did that sort of as an afterthought. I wasn't really paying attention to it, and then a month later, I got an envelope in the mail from DFB, I think is the whole thing, and it was a disenchant stamped with a lobster, and I was so pleasantly delighted. I didn't know that was coming to me, and that's now in my old school deck every time. But ever since then, I've kind of kept an eye on it. But I was living in Austin, Texas until this past summer, and LobsterCon was always too far for me to make it out to. So I moved to Connecticut back in August of last year, though, and that was one of the first things I knew. Oh, now I can actually start attending this thing.
Yeah. So we've both recently moved. Well, me less recently than you, but we've both moved from Texas to the Northeast. And what do you think about it? How you like being up here?
Yeah, I do. This is more of a coming home for me than it is for you, because you're a native Texan, right? Yeah. Whereas I grew up in Connecticut, lived here until I was 21. I went to UConn, but I've been away from Connecticut since I finished undergrad. So I've been gone for 15 years. So this is my first time living here as an actual adult. I'm here with my wife and kid, and we're back with family and everything. And I'm in Milford, which is near New Haven. It's a kind of beach town, and it's lovely, but it's a suburb or a small city, which compared to Austin is a big change. But it's been great for my first 9 months here.
Yeah, and I know it's something. I think the thing that's the weirdest to me is, we live probably twice as far away from each other in Texas than we do up here, and yet it seems like it takes twice as long. I've yet to go see you since you've moved up here, and it's been, like you said, almost a year. And
I know it is coming now. I think I've been meaning for a while to just plan a day in the city where I'm gonna connect with a bunch of people who are approximately there, including you, but also it sounds like we're both going to be at Sacred Torch this summer, so
I'm hoping to make that. So we'll do that. So you've only gone to this one LobsterCon, which wasn't even the old school one; it's the pre-modern one. How's the experience for you? You liked the location, the lobster rolls, all that stuff? Did you have a good time?
Yeah, the whole thing was amazing, man. Well, I forget, for context, have you been to them?
Yeah, I played the pre-modern one last year. I've been to the last 3 old school ones, so I'll go to the old school one later this year. So.
Were you planning to attend this and just didn't get in the 7-minute window was open, or were you?
Yeah, I was definitely wanted to go, and it kind of slipped my mind. I didn't even think about it till 20 minutes after they'd opened, so it wasn't even close to getting on the wait list. So it was but it's which is it's such a double-edged sword with that, where I'm so happy for the duress guys and for the format that there's that kind of enthusiasm, but it does suck that it's you've been attending for years. You're obviously very big in this community and a number of the tangential ones, and you not being able to get in is
not amazing. We had a similar situation. I attended this with four of the other Romancing the Stone guys, but there were two other people who had wanted to go and they just missed the signups by a few minutes and couldn't do it.
Yeah. I don't know what the solution is, but it's for somebody else to figure out. But hopefully, there's some way to make it so everybody that wants to experience it gets the chance, because it's a lot of fun. And
yeah. Well, it's funny because like the entire event was wonderful, as I think pretty much anyone would tell you. I look at events like this with a little bit of a specific view because I run the Romancing the Stones tournaments in Austin, or I did until I moved. So I have years of kind of TO organizational experience at this point, but it's on such a smaller scale. Right. Like our Romancing the Stones vintage tournaments are like 24 people. We're running them at local bars. In many cases, they're ones Tweety owns, so we don't even have to work out anything up front. Lobster Con, it's hundreds of people, a space that I don't know what the deal is with the Dante, but I'm sure there's a lot going on there. They're coordinating people coming in from out of town. They're getting lobster rolls for everyone. And while we were there, Spirit Airlines shut down.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they made an announcement midway through being like, hey, if anyone's on Spirit, talk to us and we can help you figure out what you're doing. And it's like, that's a level of tournament logistics that I have never touched. I don't expect to ever touch it. And I don't know if you can hear my dog's coughing in the background. No, gross. I will never come close to that, but with it, I also just spend the whole time in admiration of what they're pulling off and what they're doing. So it's like,
it's hard enough logistically to go to an event like this, much less run an event like this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering how much sleep any of those guys got the entire time. It's like we were there on day one playing until 10:30, and then we headed out, and then I'm like, oh, you got to break everything down and deal with this now. It was wild, but it was so impressive. The whole thing ran really smoothly, both the tournaments themselves and also everything tied to it with food and beverage and all that. So great experience. Yeah. If I can get in next year, I will go again.
Did you drive up there or you take the train?
I drove. Yeah, it was 2.5 hours.
Okay. I recommend taking the train. It's a pretty easy train ride. I don't know how far you are from the New Haven Amtrak station, but or anything.
I am 5 minutes from the New Haven line, 5 minutes walking. I have never taken the train to Boston. I've done the train south a number of times. My wife's a huge fan of New York, and one of the level 3 reasons that we moved to Connecticut, or one of the appeals of it, was being able to go to the city. So we have been going constantly since moving here, but always south, not north.
Right. Yeah. Cool. So you played, kind of was the talk of the tournament at some point, or at least it has been since then. You played a different take on the classic Sly deck. And we maybe talk a little bit about it. I know the card that catches everyone's eye is Orcish Librarian. And personally, I kind of find the reaction to it to be yeah, of course it's Orcish Librarian. Everyone knows that card. It's a classic. It's in the very first Sly list by Paul Sly, which, I think just had its 30th anniversary of being a deck. But I guess, maybe we can explain some of those card choices, get people caught up on the history of Orcish Librarian. Just tell me about why you choose to play your version of Sly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're a good person to be talking with about this, because you and I have been playing the middle school format together from basically day one. I guess as quick background context, though I don't know how much it actually colors any of my card choices. The Romancing the Stones group in Austin plays middle school instead of pre-modern. For listeners, if you're not familiar with middle school, it's extremely similar to pre-modern. It just has a more permissive ban list, so we get some of the more powerful things like Necro comes to mind, Force of Will. And I think the key card missing from the format is Dark Ritual, which does have some significant impact on what you're not seeing. For example, Moneyball is not a thing in middle school. And we have some slight rules changes, like damage on the stack, which that affects Sly. Original wish functionality around wishing for cards from exile, and than a burn.
Yeah.
Ty and I have been playing middle school together since 2020. We started our leagues pretty early in COVID, and Ty was there for the very first one, which I was pulling up that report to reference going into this. You were playing Turboland Oath.
Yes.
In that event.
That was the first deck I ever built in middle school, and I still think it's really good. I just haven't, I try to play a new deck every time and haven't had a chance to go back and play it. But, at this point, I think everyone's gotten a lot better at the format, so I don't know how good it is going forward. But yeah, we're not talking about that. We're talking about Sly.
Yeah, but I think it feeds into some of what was happening with how I built Sly in the first place and have continued playing it ever since, which is when we first built the format, I think, or first started playing the format, I certainly made assumptions about what general strategies were going to be the best. And one of the silly first things I said was like, clearly blue is going to be the best color in this format. Which led to, for example, me putting Urza's Rage in my deck. I was like, oh, this will be great. No one can counter this, and everyone's going to be on blue. I made some kind of snap decisions like that when I played Sly in our first league. Some of them were strategic and theoretically informed, like the Urza's Rage thing. Some of the other decisions were kind of vibes based. My very first exposure to this format was the year before. We had a vintage tournament in Houston, and then the following day, as the kind of like Sunday chill out follow up, we did a middle school tournament at Brash Brewing, and I was like massively hungover for that event, and I registered the Urza's Saga Precon deck special delivery. It's like a red-green aggro deck.
Okay.
I brought that sealed. I was really hungover. I was not playing like any real Magic, but I was watching a gentleman there. I don't remember his name, but he was playing a Sly-esque list with Port and Wasteland, and he had Tanglewire in there too.
Okay.
And I was watching him play. I was like, oh, this is really cool. This is a very different take than just like burning people.
Right.
So in 2020, when we started playing our leagues, I was like, oh, why don't I try that? So I put Ports and Wastelands in there. I opted against Tanglewire. That felt like a step too far, but I did that. And then the Orcish Librarian is, unsurprisingly, it was just a nod to the original Sly deck that you mentioned earlier from Paul Sly. I thought it'd be cool. There was a brief period in Legacy years before where I was playing Burn, and I had a one of Sensei's Divining Top in my deck, and I always thought that was kind of fun to add an effect like that into these archetypes with no card selection. So I kind of justified it to myself, but more than that, I was just like, oh, this is just a fun side format. It's pretty casual. I want to put something fun and amusing in my deck and not try to be completely optimized, because at the time I think we were all there primarily to have fun in the dark days of COVID. So I put in the Orcish Librarian. So I mean, it was kind of, I guess, flying by the seat of my pants at the beginning. And at that point in 2020, there weren't that many results out there for these formats to go off of.
Yeah. And the results that were out there were so varied. There was no consensus burn list, even in pre-modern. People are still playing Urza's Bobble or no Urza's Bobble. All those types of questions were still up in the air. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's obviously become less true as time has gone on. There's a lot of good data out there now. But even then, this format compared to like Vintage, which I play, is such a broad metagame that if you look at a given tournament, you're going to see, like, it's easy to look at a Moto challenge and not see Sly in the top 8.
Right.
So there's not always like a perfect solved list or great information to go off of.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people see that Orcish Librarian and maybe the Urza's Rage and think, oh, this is such a weird take, but like it's 3 copies of the card compared to the big change, which I think is you're playing 23 land, and 8 of those are the Rashadan Ports and the Wastelands, and this definitely has a historical background. I think it was Shuhei Nakamura at Pro Tour Columbus in 2005, kind of like was like the red deck win style. Once the Sly decks evolved from being not having access to Fire Blast, and that card rotates, and they don't have Lightning Bolt, and they had to take a more slow controlling game plan to back up their 1-drops. Wasteland and Port, came to prominence, and I think they're really good. I've always kind of wondered why people don't play it. It helps your combo matchups a lot. Otherwise you're just like hoping you're trying to race with Ball Lightning. The only issue is that you don't have a lot to do with colorless mana, and that's kind of where maybe Tangle Wire could come in. But also you do have 4 Curse Scrolls, which I think is the correct number of Curse Scrolls in a deck like this. I know some people play fewer, but when you have extra mana, extra lands, and extra colorless mana, it's a great way to use that. It does kind of help justify the Urza's Rage, right? Like, Urza's Rage versus Volcanic Hammer is, they're both about the same, but if you have extra colorless mana, like Urza's Rage does have upside that Instant or Volcanic Hammer doesn't have. And even Orcish Librarian, it actually costs colorless mana. And so I want to talk about other cards that have you considered other colorless sources, colorless cards to play, or other ways to spend colorless mana, like Mishra's Factory, or like we said, Tangle Wire. I know people played Ankh of Mishra, or even like Blistering Firecat, I think is a reasonable way to use colorless mana. What do you think about those types of cards?
I think they're all very cool. I will preface this by letting down any of the more competitive listeners that you might have on this podcast by saying a lot of what I play is dictated by card availability, and that's specifically that I'm getting this, or I've been getting this deck altered for years now. So I like to play my nice altered cards. So like, if I made the choice to add in factories, I don't have altered factories. So that's one thing. But I have thought about that, and that's one of the nice things of watching the other Sly players out in the broader format. They are coming up with some really cool tech that I admire a lot. Rob Connolly in our middle school leagues played that like Ponza-esque Sly deck where he was playing Ankh of Mishra and Manlands, and I thought that looked really cool. Ankh would be nice in some matchups for this deck, but with 23 lands, it's like a bit of an ombo.
And it you have Curse Scrolls, you're trying to play all your land drops. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Firecat is a sweet choice. A card that out of my sideboard that I considered early in our days of playing it, but I haven't revisited, is Bottle Gnomes.
Okay.
I think that would be a fun one. And there was a period of...
could be played. That's
yeah, totally. I thought about Wrathy Dragon as a way to use up additional land drops. And a card that I was playing for a period of time that I've since abandoned, but is Shivan Gorge, which isn't exactly a colorless mana sink, but it's just an extra thing to be using our mana on every turn.
Right.
I think, to return to your point about Curse Scroll, despite the fact that like Wasteland and Port and Librarian and Urza's Rage are right now seemingly jumping out at people about this list, the 4 Curse Scroll is ultimately, I think, a lot of what binds this whole strategy together.
Right.
The reason I'm playing so many land drops is so that I can consistently activate Curse Scroll, and often 2 of them at the same time.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the secrets of success for the Moneyball Black is Curse Scroll. They don't play 4, but in so many matchups when you play Moneyball, it's the best card you can draw. And I think here you're just saying, yeah, this is the game plan. I'm going all in on the long game Curse Scroll, Rishadan Port, Wasteland strategy, which in a way is kind of like pre-sideboarded for the mirror. You're basically blanking all creatures of ever doing damage to you, so then they just have to burn you out. And at the same time, you have that inevitability with the Curse Scrolls because they're repeatable.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Curse Scroll has loomed large in my consciousness, and anyone who is aware of like the Tempest block period of time, I think knows that Curse Scroll is a really oppressive card. So it was weird to me when I saw Sly starting to go down to like 2 copies of it. That's the lowest I've consistently seen them go, but it's always just struck me as one of the most powerful things that you can do with the deck. I can get on board with not playing a full 4, but going down to 2 just isn't connecting for me.
So a lot of times, you know, what you'll see instead of the Cursed Scrolls, they'll have Sulfuric Vortex, and you really don't seem to favor that card a lot. You only have the one copy in your sideboard. What are your takes on Vortex and why you don't play a lot of that?
Yeah, I've gotten lower and lower on it as time has gone on. When I first built the deck, I considered it as a sideboard card, and that's what I was playing it as. I was playing two in my sideboard for a long time. I think you can make an argument for it as a main deck card because it can potentially represent an enormous amount of damage and this effect that like will win you the game even if you're doing nothing else. Your opponents might not have an answer for it, and they just can't deal with a guaranteed 2 damage every turn.
But it's similar to Cursed Scroll in that regard, right?
Similar to Cursed Scroll. Yep, exactly. And Lavamancer. Like I think any of these repeatable sources of damage can be really threatening. My issue with Sulfuric Vortex is that one, I feel like I am just not running into that many decks that are gaining life as a way to beat me. Exalted Angel would be the big one that comes to mind for me as an issue. But for the most part, like I'm not running into like Warmth as the hate.
Right.
And if I run into something like the decks that are playing Spike Feeder or Ravenous Baloth, in general, I am not finding them to be like looping those cards, and I'm willing to just like eat the shitty thing that happens if they play a Spike Feeder in game 4.
Power through your Cursed Scrolls,
yeah. And then the bigger problem though is that I just find Sulfuric Vortex to be really unpredictable with how it's going to play out in a given board state. Like if you slam one on turn 3, you don't know if that race is going to end up favoring you.
Right.
Sometimes you know, but it sucks if you play it and then suddenly you're behind on life and you're just dying really quickly. And that's another thing is like, it's a card that is theoretically helping you out against things like Exalted Angel. But even if you play one in your opponent as an Exalted Angel, they're still attacking you for 4 every turn while you're taking another 2 off your Vortex. So I've just died to my Vortexes enough times. And it also has this side benefit of being, in my opinion, it's a bad card in the mirror. So I think cutting those from my list is nice in the mirror. And while I think Sly is on a bit of a decline in the meta right now, it is just a deck that you have to be aware of and you are going to run into once the tournament is at a reasonable size. So I'm really happy with my build as something that I feel confident in my mirror match, and Vortex is a part of that.
Yeah, is there any consideration? So I guess, you know, Vortex costs double red. You don't have any cards that cost double red in your deck besides Fire Blast. Is it kind of difficult to cast? You know, if you can't cast it on turn 3, it loses some of its value. Each turn that you can't cast it, you're losing out on potential. How much does that play into the decision?
It didn't. That has been pointed out to me since then, and I think it's actually probably quite a valid point that this deck is really not playing off red. I have not made that decision consciously with Vortex or any other cards or on any other red things that I not cut. That said, Ball Lightning is a card that, while I never was really interested in playing in the first place, I knew that being on a Port Wasteland setup, it would be a bad idea to play red.
Yeah. And I agree. I've never been a fan of Ball Lightning. It doesn't seem it's about the same as Vortex in the mirror. You know, they're always going to have a way to kill it. It's a liability in so many matchups. You know, it's like trying to go all in on the Ball Lightning plan to speed up your clock does not seem to be as effective as maybe the Rishad Import Wasteland plan. And I just want to go on the record here and say I've watched a lot of pre-modern videos over the last couple of weeks, and a lot of people brewing different decks. And the card that has impressed me the most in the metagame right now has been Rishad Import. I think that card is very good. It's a card that I think it's really good the better you are at playing it. Once you learn all the tricks and the better you know the metagame, I think it's kind of like it's about, when people say, oh, Cabal Therapy is such a good card with good players, or if they know the metagame, I think Cabal Therapy is not as hard to play as people claim it is. But I think Rishad Import is the card that actually is that. And so, how was Rishad Import for you on the weekend? Was it as strong as I think it is?
amazing. Yeah, it was so good.
Yeah.
There was my round 14 match was against Brian Selden, and we were on camera, but they didn't end up streaming it. I'm hoping that they'll release the video from it, both as sort of an ego thing because it made my deck look really good,
Yeah.
but also I think that match demonstrated how good Port and Wasteland are here. Selden was playing Enchantress, and I have found that match to be pretty favorable for Sly on this setup, and it gets illustrated there because Port lets you interact with wild growth in this really amazing way.
Mm-hmm.
It also Wasteland gives you an out to Sarah's Sanctum. So I think there specifically they were great, but all weekend Port and Wasteland were both amazing. Part of that came from the surprise value, which was like the first time I ever Wastelanded someone.
Yeah.
In every match, they're just like, oh, you're playing Wasteland, and no one's playing around that, nor should they have. Like that's not.
Yeah, maybe they should though, because this is the same thing that I encounter when I go back and I look at old extended lists from the late '90s, early 2000s, right? And there's just not a lot of Wastelands, and then you read about the people that were playing Wasteland and how good it was for them, and it just took a long time for people to realize you could just put Wasteland into your deck. I even remember the early Legacy decks, the Canadian Threshold list that I don't think played Wasteland at first, and that seems crazy when you get to the times that everyone's playing Stifle and Wasteland, by the time it hits Delver. But like at the beginning, I don't think those decks had Wasteland. It took the community a long time to realize that Wasteland's just that good. Now, it's a little bit hard to fit into your mana base. I've played it in Moneyball Black. I think I would love to be able to play 4 there, but you need so much black mana in that deck that it doesn't quite work. But I think in your deck, Wasteland fits right. Fits in easily.
Yeah, it's never been an issue in this deck. I think Wasteland starts to get sketchier once you're on anything more than one color.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've been messing around with the green white Mad Dogs deck, like Madness thing. And in my first couple games and just in goldfishing it, I found the mana to be like pretty bad just off the back of 2 Wasteland and 4 Factory. Which feels counterintuitive when we think about, as you mentioned, like the legacy decks.
Right.
I think I still sometimes get in this legacy and vintage mindset where it's like, oh, you can fetch for a duel, so it's no real issue to have multiple colors.
Fetch lands are actually so much worse without dual lands. So, like they're worse. Like I think there's arguments to be made that like Windswept Heath is worse than Elfhame Palace in some decks. I'm not going to make that argument, but I think it's closer than people want to talk about. Yeah,
I can get down with that. I have also been playing. I just put together the Rexer deck, and I'm like, wow,
don't even get
this mana is bad, and when Windswept, it's not good.
Yeah.
But yeah, Port was awesome all weekend. I think my quarterfinals match against Galen on Hermit Feb, I believe they also didn't live stream. I'm not positive if that one got streamed, but I'd like for them to release that too, because that's also one where you see the effect of the mana denial. The Feb matchup, I think a lot of people say is really good for Sly. Reading Galen's take on it and thinking about the number of times I've lost to FEB, I think it's actually not a good matchup for Sly, but having access to Wasteland and Port against the deck that is entirely non-basic is really good.
Yeah, that's been my experience in playing middle school, where there's a lot more combo. You just run into a lot of decks where it's like they had no basic lands, so any Wasteland, especially with what's the card, Weather Wayfarer, that's like game over. It's happened to me several times. Yeah. Rashad and Port, I remember at the middle school World Championships a couple years back, we played a match. I think we went 5 games because I was on World Gorger Dragon. But there was one game where like I had the win, I just needed to draw a land to win, and I just couldn't because you kept porting me down. And it's like if I just drawn one land, I just couldn't draw land, and then I lost. And so I think against the combo decks, Port I think is very strong. There's combo decks where it's not good, like Blue Storm, but that's not as common.
And I mean you'll see times when it feels like it should be good in the match and it's not. Like my semifinals match against Replenish, neither of those games were close. And going into those games, people were telling me like, "Wow, you should be good. Like Port and Wasteland are going to be strong." And I found they didn't do anything.
Yeah,
It's like,
they
oh yeah,
look like they would be good, but the good replenished players, they know not to expose their ancient tombs to Wasteland or Port,
yep.
and then also when they have attunement, it's really easy for them to just assemble, 6 basic lands in play.
Yeah, and frantic search is also a big issue where it's like, oh, I'll port you, and they just frantic search and respond.
Yeah,
feel like an idiot. So, but I think in general, I agree with the concept that the Mana Denial package gives you an angle of play against combo and really the field that you're missing in traditional Sly, and that's just what I've been looking for with this list the whole time. It's just a way to play the game on more than the level of saying I'm going to take you from 20 to 0.
Yeah.
And that's both. I mean, I guess that's a tactical or strategic plan, but that was more so like if I'm going to play mono red, I still want to enjoy myself and have some dimension to the games that you don't otherwise get.
Yeah. So 2 more questions, I guess, about the deck before we talk about maybe some other things.
Yeah.
You mentioned, you're getting the deck altered, card availability is kind of a thing. Is that why there are no fetch lands in the deck, or is that a separate choice that you've made regarding?
It's both.
Okay.
It's both. So when I first built the deck, I didn't own any of the cards other than I think I had my like Jackal Pups and Lightning Bolts from when I was a kid, but the rest of the deck I had to just go buy. And I was like, I don't know if we're going to be playing this format for a long time or not. So I was just like, I'm going to buy mountains. I'm not going to bother with fetch land. So I guess that's not an alter thing, but it is a card availability thing. I just, at the time I put it together, I didn't have Wooded Foothills or Bloodstained Mires. And then I've just never found myself wanting them since then. I don't know what the math is in terms of how those will end up affecting your land drops or not, but I will say that this build is pretty mana hungry, specifically with just 4 port and 4 curse scroll. So I do want to pretty consistently be making my land drops, and my non-mathematical theory of that is just like playing 15 mountains will optimize the chance of making land drops.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of math about deck thinning that I believe in math, but sometimes the math is making an argument that I don't think it's actually trying to make. People say, oh, it takes so many, like thinning your deck of one land is only worth like a fraction of a card, and but it adds up over time, and sometimes the card that you would draw instead of that land is another land, and I think that kind of gets lost in the mix there.
Yeah, and I think that there are good and bad components of that cumulative effect of playing fetch lands. Like a thing that I miss out on by not playing them is Grim Lavamancer activations, and I would say this is a worse Lavamancer deck than other Sly, and that's meaningful. I had some cases that were close calls this weekend on activating my Lavamancers. I didn't end up getting actually punished for it, but it was like I was down to the last 2 cards in my graveyard kind of situation.
So how often are you just there's no creatures on the board, you have 2 cards in your graveyard, you have a Lavamancer up. How often are you just throwing that 2 damage to their face, or are you saving that for the future because it's so much harder to get cards in your graveyard?
I'm pretty conservative with Lavamancer in general, so even if I have more than 2, like if I have like 4 cards in my graveyard, I am still likely to just attack with my Lavamancer. I play Lavamancer and this deck in general a little closer to being like big red control. So I'm usually prioritizing board removal with renewable sources. I don't think I've shot face very much with it. No fetches though. A cumulative benefit you get from that is like in aggro mirrors, you're not shocking or bolting yourself off your mana base, which is
if you're saying you see 2 to 3 fetches a game, like that's a lot of life, and that matters a lot. I like the idea of not playing it. You know, it just, like you said, it makes Grim Lavamancer a little bit worse. Unfortunately, it's pre-modern. There's not something you can play instead of Grim Lavamancer. It's still too good.
I know, yeah. Yeah, well, when I first built the deck, my original iteration only played 2 Lavamancer, and I was playing 2 Goblin Cadet, which is a card that I kind of despise. But at the time, I was like, there's just not a better other 1-drop. Then I saw people starting to do the thing of playing 4 Lavamancers, and it's like, oh yeah, that is just better. Yeah. It's been funny seeing people come around on Cadets again or playing Goblin Patrol, and I totally get and like the theory. Patrol is not playable in this build because Echo is such a non-bow with port. And Cadets, I played that card as a kid. Ben Kendrick had talked me into that in middle school, and like never did it ever work out for me. Right. So I
actually was kind of, I've played Cadet once, and we may talk about this. The one time I played a Sly resembling deck in our middle school league was like a Goblin Sly, and so I played Cadet mostly as like a extra Goblin for Goblin Grenade, since you can play Goblin Grenade in middle school. And what I found was actually when it gets blocked, it feels really bad, but then the next turn, like your opponent can't attack with it. And they can't block with it because then you get it back. So
that's true.
It's actually not as bad as I thought it was. Now, in like a mirror or something, it is pretty bad. But like, I was actually surprised at the way it worked out. Where, oh yeah, they get it, but like, what are they going to do with it? It's just as bad on their side.
Well, I'm a vibes player, and I just can't afford the psychological hit in a match of having my Goblin Cadet stolen and then me crashing out hard over that one. But no, I totally, like I said, I get the theory, and I think I shouldn't even call it theory because I think it's just practically true that Goblin Cadets has a lot of good uses. But
yeah, it still doesn't make it a good card, but it does fit in some spots.
Yeah, your Goblin Sly deck, for listeners, I played that in like, I don't know, one of our first years worth of leagues, and it was we're calling it Goblin Sly because it's sort of a mash together of goblins and Sly, but in actuality, it was just a Goblin Grenade deck. It wasn't doing like put in a siege gang.
Like it has Goblin Lackeys and Pile Drivers, and the rest are like cheap goblins. I don't think there's a goblin that costs more than 2. I might have played a Goblin King, like. So it's still like a low to the ground, low curve deck, which was inspired by a historical list. I think there's a Grand Prix in Paris back in 2003 that I copied kind of the base of the deck from. But it is just like a Goblin Grenade. Like, I figured, hey, if you have 2 Goblin Grenades and a Fire Blast, like that's a lot of damage.
You just win, yeah. So and you could play a similar deck in pre-modern with Reckless. Is it Reckless Abandon?
It is Reckless Abandon. I've tried it. I haven't tried it in a while. When I did try it, the metagame was not definitely conducive for it. Like, if you're playing a Goblin Slide deck, you really kind of want to be the only slide player in the room. You don't really want to be playing against other decks, especially decks with like 4 Curse Scrolls or something. So when I did it, the red deck win style decks were very popular, and I could not win a game with it. But it might be time for it to come back or give it a try. So
yeah, well, your list has been on the, I guess I'll call it the long list of middle school decks I would like to steal at some point. I've instead just been stealing your zoo list and playing that. Because there's only so many low mana curve aggro decks that you need to play. But that the Goblin Slide deck I think is really cool, and I'd like to give it a spin at some point.
Yeah, so I guess last question is really Orcish Librarian. How good was it for you? Did it do anything?
Yeah. This is the one that I'm having to get asked about a lot. So, all right, like I gave the earlier context of why it's in the deck in the first place, but the reason that it stayed in the deck after the first time I played it was that, one, I liked its presence as just a like reminder that I'm here to have fun, which to an extent becomes less true as time goes on, because like, especially since I moved to Connecticut, I haven't been playing Vintage, and I've just been playing Premodern. So I think Premodern is becoming my primary format, and and it just gets more competitive when that's the case. That said, like I still like having it there to remind myself of like my original intentions with playing this format, which is just to like get back to the card pool that I grew up with and loved. Mm-hmm. So that has remained true. However, Orcish Librarian has rarely, if ever, fully punished me as a card. Lobster Con itself, Orcish Librarian was amazing because I never drew it all day. and I mean that quite literally. Like, I think I saw it in some mulligans, but I never drew it, and it never showed up. So it did not punish me. And as a result, even though this isn't really like mathematically accurate, it just felt like I was playing a 59 card deck because I just boarded it out every time, and it never mattered in the main. I will make a couple points about Orcish Librarian that I've been thinking through. As the start of the thought exercise on Orcish Librarian, I would just ask, how do we evaluate this card if it only cost red? Instead of 1 in a red, if it was a 1-drop? And my take is if it was just red, it would be getting some play. Not a huge amount. We wouldn't register 4, but I don't think people would scoff at it quite as much.
Right.
Because if it's just red, it's not that far off of being like a Grim Lavamancer. Like, same cost, same body, same activation cost, and that activation cost is likely giving you access to burn every turn.
Or it's like a Sensei's Divining Top that you can attack with. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's been the reason that I say Librarian hasn't punished me is like, obviously 1 in a red for a 1/1 is shitty and you wouldn't play that. But like, once it's in play, it does attack the same as a Lavamancer or a Mog Fanatic. So like, it doesn't feel terrible. It's not like it's a 0/2. It's not like it costs 5 CMC. It's not like its ability is something that has nothing to do with my strategy. And it doesn't have any specific like downside. It's not like activating it costs me 2 life or something like that.
Or exiling cards from your graveyard or discarding a card or
Yeah, exactly. Like it's
just mana, and we already established that you have more mana in your deck than most slide decks.
Yeah, I think so I would definitely, not only would I not recommend anyone register it, I would specifically tell them, if you're interested in my list, like, build my list and turn it into an Earthquake or a Volcanic Hammer or something, because it's in there just for me. But it's not so laughably bad that it's like completely and utterly a meme card. I think that this goes back to what I was saying about how I built the deck and what I'm looking to get out of the play experience. But for me, a lot of the point of deck selection in Magic is to maximize my own tournament experience. And part of that is like, making the correct choices so that I'm going to successfully play the game and win the game. But another part of that is just looking at tournaments as a life experience that you accrue. And if I look at Orcish Librarian that way, it's like, now I get to be the guy who made it to the semis of the largest pre-modern event ever with an Orcish Librarian in my deck. And if I hadn't registered Orcish Librarian, people might still be excited to see like Sly with Wastelands and Ports, but it's such a different story. And I like to look at tournaments as that, in addition to just like, how do I put up the best win rate?
Yeah, and you do know something about stories, right? You're a writer. Is that something that you like to tell stories? So maybe that's part of your instinct to play it there.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, I'm a bit of a vibes player, and I don't go very far down any math rabbit holes on any of this stuff. As you said, I'm a writer. That's one of my other hobbies, and I am certainly a liberal arts major. So I tend to look at some of this stuff maybe in a little bit more frou-frou of a way than I should. So, register Orcish Librarian at your own peril. Yeah. But I don't think registering it is ever going to be like, you're going to come away from the tournament completely hating your life.
Yeah, I did some search on some deck databases just to find other instances of this card seeing play, and it's seen this some play, I guess, in some CEDH. I guess it probably combos with something, but not a lot. Like there's like 4 instances of that, all by the same guy. So maybe that's his pet card too. There was one guy that played it in F&M for Premodern maybe like 2 years ago. So you know, you haven't been alone in the Premodern streets. And I was really wanted to see if you know, because I know it was in Time Spiral, you know, the bonus sheet, the purple symbol set, and I was wondering if anybody ever played it back then. I did find one deck that somebody played at regionals in Oxford with like a mono red aggro deck that basically trimmed on some of their Magus of the Scrolls to play 2 extra Orcish Librarians in their deck, which I was glad to see that it has seen play every time it's been legal. So you know,
what a hero. Yeah, I mean, it's funny playing, I guess, especially pre-modern, but middle school too, because I think it's really both fun and productive to go back and look at things like old extended results and see what you can pull from them. But if I think about like the decks that are present at Lobster Con versus a random extended deck, it's like, not only is the context completely different around what those metas would have been and why people were making their choices, but also just our thought on how we play Magic and how sophisticated we are has changed since then. So it's like, I would never be like, oh, go back and look to see if people are playing Orcish Librarian and that is your proof that you can play this card.
Right.
But it is fun to see how people have thought about these random card choices over the years, and I think you can at least pull a little bit from that.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly like playing old school and pre-modern, mostly just to look at the cards. You know, it's
yeah.
The gameplay in pre-modern is pretty good compared, I guess, to old school sometimes, but they're both good enough. But like, I just want to see the old cards, and I also own a lot of these cards now, and if I don't really believe in owning cards not to use them, so I'm glad I have a way to play with them.
Yeah, I agree with that philosophy. I've been on a bit of a like right-sizing quest for years now to try to get my collection into a state where everything is stuff I actually have a realistic chance of playing, which is sort of, I think, an opposite approach to what you do, right? Like you are somewhat of a completionist on collecting.
Yeah, I have my goals that I'm trying to do. It used to be a little bit more ambitious when I was still playing like modern and occasionally Pioneer and Standard, which I have completely given up on those now. But in being a completionist and playing Vintage or Legacy doesn't quite work out because it's just like every card ever you have to get. So,
yeah.
But it has been helpful to like just focus on old school and pre-modern. You know, I'm really close to having all the pre-modern cards. I'll never have all the middle school cards, unfortunately, thanks to Portal 3 Kingdoms.
But the cool thing about your ability to do that is like now you get to go dumpster diving and get really special stuff like your Riptide Manglers in the last league. That ability unlocks a lot for you, and
you know, that's always been my thing. Is like if I always wanted to go to an event, and sometimes I'll come up with a card that I want to play, and just like you can't find it. This is much harder. It was much harder to find cards back in the mid-aughts, even early 2010s, where like you know a card exists, you probably drafted it a bunch of times, you didn't save it, it's an uncommon, but you know you need it, and you can't find it the day of the tournament. None of the stores have any inventory. There's no TCG player to just get it shipped, overnight or whatever. It was just so hard. So I was like, I need to be prepared, and I'm gonna have 4 of every card from any of the sets that are legal. It gets a little crazy with all the extra cards they print these days. So I definitely don't keep up with that. But for a while, I had a reasonable. It was easy. I remember a PTQ. It must have been extended when it was like the 4-year extended. So it was kind of after they did the 6-year extended sets. And I literally just put every card that was legal into the back of my car and drove to the PTQ, just in case.
You mean, you never know.
You never know. And then I'm like there, and someone's like, "Hey, man, I don't have a deck," and I was like, "Well, let's just start going through these binders."
Yeah, at Lobster Con, Jake, one of the Romancing Stones guys, was like, needing to track down a wandering stream and an allied strategies for his 5-color deck he was playing.
Yeah.
It's just like
that's hard.
It's good when you get to be the guy who's like, oh yeah, I got you covered.
Yeah. So you mentioned the Romancing the Stones. That's you said vintage in middle school kind of tournament series that you do.
Yeah.
Out of I guess it's in Austin. The middle school stuff is virtual though, so if anybody's listening wants to play those, figure out what middle school is, you can just go to, I think it's stonesmtg.com.
Yeah, I'm not sure if those have some way of getting access to our Discord, but we run the leagues entirely through Discord. We have our own server, Romancing the Stones. It's got like the pink burger logo. So, yeah, definitely would encourage people to come play in the leagues. They're really relaxed in the sense that I call them a league when they're sort of not. Like it's basically just a slow motion tournament.
Mm-hmm.
We do usually 5 or 6 Swiss rounds, and we just play 1 round a week. So if you're at all time crunched, or if you're playing other webcam Magic, like it's really easy to fit these into your schedule. The crew everyone's very chill and relaxed, but I also would say, I don't know, I find the player quality to be pretty high because I consistently go like 3-3 in our leagues.
Yeah.
So like, unlike you, so but I definitely recommend it. They're a good time. They're fully proxy, but I think people are usually pretty like respectful about their proxies. They try to make stuff pretty identifiable over webcam. So yeah, definitely encourage folks to come play with us.
Yeah, and you do vintage events that are in person, mostly in the Austin area. You said you haven't played a lot of vintage since moving. Is that, I've always wanted to get more into vintage, but just never really found a group to play with. Is it something you miss?
Yeah, do you see anything in New Jersey?
There's stuff. There's the vintage groups around here, are some of like the oldest ones in the country, but they all seem to kind of be like slightly more underground, and they kind of all know each other, and if you don't really know them, it's hard to get in. Not that it's like hard, it's just like it doesn't feel the same as like, hey, we're just gonna go hang out. It's certainly a lot more competitive. It is a lot serious because they used to have big time vintage events monthly back in the 2000s. So it's like that, it's kind of coming from there, where I think vintage for you guys in Austin was just kind of like, hey, this is the way we want to play, but we're not trying to play for, you're not going to win a Mox at our events, which these days, like I don't know if you saw the what is it, the
NYSE?
Yeah, the NYSE guy says, hey, I can't do this anymore. The prizes are just too expensive if we're going to give out Power 9. Like, it's just not going to be feasible. It's already like $500 to enter those events, and that's not how I want to play Magic. So
yeah, which it's like, it's a shame because NYSE has such a historical presence for the vintage community, and I think Nick, I believe, is the gentleman who runs NYSE. I think he places a lot of burden on himself to fulfill that historical thing of giving away power, but it's like, it's just not feasible. And I think it opens up a lot of problems too when you have these extreme prize pools and high entry fees. Like, I'd love to play in an NYSE, but there's part of me that's just like, I pay $500 to play in a tournament and I get vintaged out or I scrub out. Like, I know I'm just going to be unhappy. And I think cutting ourselves loose of a bunch of those expectations is good. That's a nice thing at Lobster Con, was like the whole thing was a charity event. I won some like Moto League promo codes, and I won a powder keg that's pretty cool, but like, there was nothing on the line other than glory, and I think that can be a nice way to loosen things up.
And I don't mind I personally playing matches for large sums of money. I've played Pro Tours, Grand Prix. I've played matches where it's been there, but none of those had such an upfront entry fee. It wasn't my own money. It was all gravy. It's either I'm going to win $200 or I'm going to win $500. Like, if I win this match, like it's I think it's fine. I support people that want to do it. It's not for me. So.
Yeah, exactly. I support people who want to do it, and it's definitely not a shot at Nick or NYSE. I think it's just like he's running up against the realistic limits of what he can do. And there's also, I think he takes really seriously as a TO, like tournament safety. Like, I'm pretty sure he has security on site, and then you definitely can't scrimp on things like having judges. If you're going to have a $500 event, you got to do that. Romancing the Stones, the whole reason we've been able to maintain ourselves is we have zero overhead.
Right.
Our paper events, it's just like, we're all friends, REL, and you just got to work it out between yourselves. We don't have judges on site. We just pay out the entry fees back to people, and that usually keeps people happy. And that's why I was kind of saying this about LobsterCon earlier too. I am extremely impressed with and would never judge anyone's ability to organize these big events where you've got to like have concerns around safety, around judges, et cetera, et cetera. To me, it seems like just a massive headache. So mad respect to anyone who can actually do that. To your question about vintage earlier, I've had kind of the same experience where I think the Northeastern vintage community seems like it is an established thing that I am on the outsides of, and like, that's fine. I won't say I missed it. I had a really good time. I went back to Austin for spring break in April, and we played vintage while I was there, and I had a blast playing it for the first time in a while. But it's nice, like, playing just pre-modern. I don't have to keep up on new cards at all.
Right.
I'm not having to worry about that. And like, I do think, I'm not gonna like use this as a time to talk about WotC and their recent ways of managing themselves, but I think I'm reaching a point in my life. I'm 37, I have a kid, etc. That like the way I want to interact with this hobby comes a lot closer to playing formats like pre-modern than it does to keeping up with vintage or legacy or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, I think that kind of covers everything. Are you going to the old school LobsterCon later this year, or are you just doing the pre-modern?
No, I didn't register. I'll probably regret that.
Yeah.
When is it? Is it September?
I think so. It's usually September.
You're going, right?
I'll be there. Yeah.
It's a ways out, but do you have any idea what you'd want to play?
September 18th. I'm leaning, like, I've been playing a lot of Twiddle Time Vault in the past few years, but I'm definitely kind of off that for now. I need to take a break. It's so, most likely it'll be a workshop deck.
Is LobsterCon this year Atlantic or Swedish?
It's usually Atlantic. It was only Swedish last year because they had the giant shark on the line. So this will be Atlantic again. I'll probably pull out my workshops, play something like that. Though I'm looking at some other ways to take a workshop deck. I have a couple events coming up in the next couple months that all kind of like tune-ups for it. So I'll get some reps in and see if there's something else I want to try. I played. If you listen to my last podcast, the X Point one, where I played, I played workshops there with right there in Hartford, and played like Relic Berry Howling Mine, and I was like, man, this is really good. I should maybe play this more, just Relic Berry Howling Mine, and so like I might try and put that into a traditional workshops type list and see how it works. I
like that.
Yeah.
I mean, Relic Barrier in general, I think is amazing.
Yeah, Relic Barrier is very good. Yeah.
I mean, like, you and Simon have done things with workshops where I'm just like, oh yeah, that's just the best thing you can do in these formats.
It's really good. It's especially really good if, like, I was at the first LobsterCon I went to. I wasn't sure what to play, and I think it was Svanta. We were standing in the same spot, and he says, I was like, I don't know what to play. He's like, listen, if you want to win, like, play workshops. But if you need to win, you have to play the deck. and it's like, okay, that's good, because I certainly do not need to win. I am not wired that way. Like, I want to go to LobsterCon, have some drinks, play some games. I'm definitely trying to win. I enjoy trying to win. That's what I like about Magic. I'm going to play every game maximum hard. But it is so much easier when you can just play a Triskelion on turn 2 than having to like go through turn after turn of activating Jayemdae Tome and figuring out like exactly how to close out these games that have been locked up forever, or like walking the fine lines of your burn deck. Like, it is easy to just play workshops, and makes for a less stressful day.
I think I'm completely on the same page with you. I remember having a conversation with Brian Hockey, who you've had on this podcast, or I don't know what
spoilers.
name he was going by on that. Yeah,
I don't think we gave his name out.
Someone Fort was on here.
Yeah,
and we were just talking about how I think there's a segment of the Magic community that is like, it's all for fun, doesn't matter how you do, and that's like totally fine to engage with the hobby that way. I find that it is really fun to try.
Right.
Like, I really enjoy when I'm like dialed in and playing well, when I feel like I've made the right deck choice, when my opponent is playing well. I find that to be like an immensely gratifying feeling, and I think it's mostly just, you do want to not have that point that you mentioned of like needing to win. Right. If you can just avoid that mindset, then I think you can have a great tournament experience in general, trying but not needing to.
Yeah, totally agree.
Well, I guess before we sign off, so you've got Lobster Con in the fall. It sounds like we're both going to be meeting in Manhattan for the Sacred Torch event. You got any other events coming up?
Let's see. There's an event next weekend in New Jersey for Old School Goblin Hero. Some redacted event beginning of June. That's really it. I every year I put it on my calendar for the Houston Hurricane. First week of September, and I doubt I'll go, but it's always on there.
It's fun.
Like, I always want. It's easy enough to like kind of fly down there for a weekend to go see everybody I know there, but it is just like, how much can I actually do it? So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm definitely at that point where it's tough to play every Magic event that I would like to play. Yeah. There's too many in a year.
Yeah, though I think, I'm not sure, I might have to go because I don't think Simon is going to LobsterCon this year. So
well, that's a good reason to go.
I don't think I'll be able to see Simon at all this year if I don't. So yeah, that maybe something like
that. Yeah. Well, you mentioned this earlier, the middle school leagues. We should have our next league starting in the next few weeks. We'll have the Schools Out League. The ambition is to kick it off in May. So we just got to get the poster together. I don't know what the situation is with Vintage in Austin right now, because I've taken a step back from running those since I'm not there. I imagine we'll be running one in the next month or two. I'm not positive. If anyone's in the Connecticut area, if you're not aware, Battleground Games in Norwalk does monthly Premodern, and I believe the next one is on May 31st, which I'm not going to be able to attend. I have a residency thing I'm going to right at the same time. But Premodern's here then. And my tournament coming up is the Team Series Invitational in Cleveland in June. Sure. So I'll be playing Vintage in middle school at that in like a month, which I'm excited about. So.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on, Stu, and I look forward to meeting up with you over the summer in the city, maybe more than once. So just let me know. And
let's make it happen. Thanks for having me on. This was great.
All right, thanks to Stu for joining me this week. I think the recording went a little bit better this time than last time, though I still think there was a little buzz occasionally, and I'm really not sure where that came from. Still trying to figure this out, but I'm not doing a lot of effort. So, until next time.